Recent trends in warehousing. Well, joining us today to speak about that, Kaitlin Peterson, Senior Director, Product Marketing at Locus Robotics. Kate, it is great to see you again. Welcome.
Thank you, Russell. Thanks for having me.
You know, I think it's fair to say that if any industry is not remaining static and is like continuing to evolve, things are going on there and in there, it's warehousing. So let's talk for a moment or two about what you see going on in that industry. What's happening there? What's evolving? Walk us through that.
There's a lot happening in the warehousing industry. We've seen this transition of labor shortages and issues with labor retention to needing to preserve capital. We're starting to see more of a trend towards that. So you combine not being able to find enough labor to get your throughput through your warehouse with not being able to spend as much capital. So that's some of the biggest stuff. And the industry just isn't, the retail isn't slowing down. We had a pretty incredible peak season online and in stores. So that's all of those contributing together to make some challenges for throughput and operations difficult for supply chain managers.
Well, we talked about this industry not being static, so all of this is going on. Do you see all of this continuing? Kind of look down the road a bit. What do you see?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we're going to continue to see the labor challenges. People just don't want to work in warehouses. We have continual open positions in warehousing. So that's a continuing trend that we're having to solve through other ways like automation and robotics. We're continuing to see this economic change and this uncertainty that's creating this unwillingness to do things like massive capital expenditures within the warehouse. So people are less willing to take a pause their operations and really invest in their warehouse. They're trying to get the throughput without having to make a ton of changes. So that's going to continue, I think, especially as we're all very uncertain about what's happening on the economy. And then as you see new technologies continue to be developed, that's going to continue to change how we think about warehousing, how we think about automation, and how we think about the future of what it means to drive product from one door out the other.
I want to drill down on a couple of those points that you just raised just a bit. You talked about the labor force situation. Companies have been doing launched any number of initiatives to make it more attractive to be there, much more flexible hours and this and that, trying to tailor make some kind of schedule for potential employees. And yet we're still experiencing a shortage, you say. And then the economy, inflationary pressures are something that are very real, is what I'm hearing you say. And that, of course, is causing some people to be cautious about investments in technology or other things. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the labor is especially interesting because we still see hourly rates trying to increase. One warehouse will have an hourly rate and then down the road you'll have a higher hourly rate. But I think what workers are really starting to look for is quality of life and work quality. So not having to walk as many miles in the warehouse, less dangerous jobs, more jobs that are satisfactory so that they have time and energy at the end of their shift to play with their kids and have dinner without feeling like they're completely exhausted. And the change in workforce. So we're seeing a massive influx of Gen Zers into the workforce, and they interact with their jobs and technology very differently. I was listening to a panel here at Manifest yesterday, and one of the fellows from Walmart was saying he doesn't actually, like, his kids are playing with iPads and programming with iPads now, and the workforce of the future is going to be very comfortable with that type of technology, but the days of manual labor are gone. So that's definitely one of the biggest things.
Absolutely. You mentioned peak season.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. How was it this year, and how was it compared to last year? What do you say?
Yeah, so the stats that have been coming out about peak is really interesting. Overall, globally, we saw a 2% increase in sales. And then in the US, we saw a 9% increase in sales. So that contributed to a huge influx. What we saw at Locus was a doubling of what product we had flowing through our customers' warehouses. So people that were using a Locus system, we had 230 million picks just in that peak season. 3.3 million picks per day in terms of just volume going through the system. Now, the telling aspect is going to be the next phase, which is returns. The data's still out on that. Retailers have a longer return window, typically for the holiday season. So we're still going to see what that peak season returns are like moving forward.
Now, in a moment, I want to ask you about Locus Robotics specifically. But right now, I want to talk about the industry in general. Clearly, many interesting things are going on in robotics. So let's talk about that. What are the most exciting developments as far as you're concerned? And where do you see this technology going? Let's just, the next, 4 or 5 years. What do you see?
I think the number one thing that we have heard is interoperability. And that's a fancy way of saying of robots working with robots and different robot companies working with each other. So if you go to a client, the client can't go to one robotic vendor for all solutions right now, right? So there's different use cases within the warehouse that require different specialties, whether it's piece picking, whether it's storage, whether it's the traditional ASRS type of mobility, pallet moves. There's no one robotic vendor that does it all, which is antithetical to what the SAPs, the big ERP companies do. You can go to get all your software. So what we're starting to see is robotic companies partnering and working together and coming to clients and say, okay, you can pair this solution with this solution and it makes everything better. So I think in the next 2 to 5 years in particular, we're going to start to see a lot more of that and this co-opetition type of aspect within the market. And I think that's going to be, accelerate consolidation within the market. It's going to accelerate partnerships and really accelerate, crafting solutions in an ecosystem for the customer.
That's really exciting, quite frankly. We're going to keep a close watch on that. Final question then, let's talk about Locus Robotics itself. Obviously, anybody watching the video knows what the company is involved in, what the space is. But more specifically, what is Locus doing right now to enhance operations of its customer base? What do you think?
Yeah, so tying back to all of everything that we've talked about, we have our specific use cases in robotics. So we have 3 robot forms that we typically use. So one is piece picking, which is the Origin bot. We have our Vector bot, which handles larger amounts of piece picking and case picking and put away. And then we have our Max bot, which handles pallet moves and case picking. All of that contributes to a RaaS model, or robots as a service, which decreases the requirement for the capital expenditure for the customer and allows them to scale up and scale down and extend in their warehouse. And then the third thing is we are leading the space in interoperability. We announced last week that we're partnering with Berkshire Grey. We are now collaborating the Origin and the Vector robots with their automated sortation put wall. So we'll continue to see more of that, but that's a high level of what we do and what we're working on at Locus.
Onward and upward. Really,
Absolutely.
Really, it sounds exciting. Kate, thank you so much for finding the time to speak with us
Thank you,
today.
Russell.
It's been a great time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's Kaitlin Peterson, Locus Robotics, and speaking with us today about some really exciting trends going on in warehousing. Thanks for watching.